There is something almost poetic about watching someone run out of options in real time. Meghan Markle, the woman who once had Hollywood knocking at her door, who signed with one of the most powerful talent agencies on the planet, who had Netflix and Spotify throwing money at her like confetti at a royal wedding, has now found herself in a position that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. She has officially run out of people willing to fight for her. And the silence from William Morris Endeavour tells you absolutely everything you need to know about where the Duchess of Sussex stands in this industry right now. Let me set the scene for you because the details here matter. When Variety, one of the most influential entertainment publications in existence, published a piece detailing the fallout between Meghan and Netflix, something striking happened. Or rather, something striking did not happen. Her own agency, the mighty William Morris Endeavour, did not lift a single finger to defend her. They did not call Variety to complain. They did not threaten to pull access. They did not issue a statement clarifying their client's position or pushing back on the narrative. They simply stayed quiet. And in Hollywood, silence speaks volumes. Now you have to understand how unusual this is when a major agency represents a valuable client and that client gets negative press. The agency goes to war. They call editors. They remind publications that the agency controls access to dozens of A-list stars who might suddenly become unavailable for interviews and cover stories. They make it very clear that there will be consequences for unfavorable coverage. This is standard operating procedure in the entertainment industry, and it has been for decades. The fact that William Morris Endeavour declined to deploy any of these tactics on Meghan's behalf reveals a brutal truth that her PR team has been desperately trying to spin away. Here is the devastating reality that nobody in her camp wants to acknowledge publicly. Meghan Markle never made William Morris Endeavour a single dollar, not one. She was never a revenue-generating client in any meaningful sense. The agency could not threaten Variety because they need Variety for their actual stars, the ones bringing in commissions, the ones whose careers they are genuinely invested in protecting. When you are not making money for the people who are supposed to be fighting for you, they simply will not fight. Business is business, and the entertainment industry has never been sentimental about clients who cannot deliver. The question everyone should be asking is how things deteriorated this badly this quickly. Because when Meghan signed with William Morris Endeavour back in 2021, it seemed like the ultimate validation of her Hollywood ambitions. This was not some mid-tier boutique agency. This was the home of A-listers. The agency that represents some of the biggest names in entertainment. Signing with them appeared to signal that Meghan had truly arrived, that she had successfully transitioned from royal to entertainment mogul. But the reality behind that signing was far more complicated than the headlines suggested. And what happened next would set the stage for everything that has gone wrong since. The signing with William Morris Endeavour looked like a triumph on paper. But behind the scenes, the arrangement was never what Meghan wanted people to believe it was. This was not the kind of locked-in full representation deal that major stars receive. According to sources familiar with the situation, this was exploratory at best, a let's see where this goes arrangement that gave Meghan the prestige of claiming the association without the actual backing that genuine A-list clients receive. William Morris Endeavour basically allowed Meghan to publicly claim the connection using her as promotional fodder while they figured out whether there was any actual opportunity worth pursuing. She could say she was repped by WME. She could mention it in interviews. She could let the implication hang in the air that she was now operating at the highest levels of Hollywood. The agency benefited from the publicity of being associated with a real-life Duchess, and Meghan benefited from the perception that she had serious industry backing. It seemed like a mutually beneficial arrangement on the surface. But here is where the disconnect becomes apparent. The opportunities that actually came through for Meghan were not the opportunities she wanted. Sources indicate that the offers she received were standard promotional circuit fare, late-night chat show appearances, the Jimmy Kimmel circuit, the usual publicity stops that actors make when they have something to promote. This was not what the former cable TV actress had in mind when she envisioned her triumphant return to DS entertainment. Meghan was not interested in being a guest on talk shows. She was looking for something bigger, something that would establish her as a serious creative force. What Meghan wanted, according to multiple sources, were the Julia Roberts-level roles. She wanted to be taken seriously as an actress again, but not in the parts she had played before. She made it clear that she would not consider what she dismissively described as playing some bimbo-bimbo. She wanted meaty, large roles that would demonstrate her range and artistic credibility. The problem was that the industry was not exactly lining up to offer her those kinds of projects. The gap between what Meghan believed she deserved and what the market was willing to provide created an impossible situation for everyone involved. The agency found itself in a difficult position. They had a client with extremely high expectations and extremely limited appeal to the people who greenlight major projects. Studios were not calling with prestige drama scripts. Directors were not requesting meetings to discuss Oscar-worthy material. The reality of Meghan's marketability did not match her self-perception, and William Morris Endeavor was stuck in the middle of that disconnect. They could either manage her expectations downward, which clearly was not going well, or they could wait and hope that something changed. What nobody anticipated was that the agency had been playing a longer game all along, and Meghan was never really the prize they were after. Here is where the story takes a turn that Meghan probably never saw coming, though perhaps she should have. William Morris Endeavor did not sign Meghan Markle because they were interested in Meghan Markle. They signed her because they wanted an inroad to the person standing next to her. The real target was always Prince Harry. Think about it from the agency's perspective. Prince Harry represents something extraordinarily rare in the entertainment scene. He is an actual royal sixth in line to the British throne. Someone whose life story captures global attention without any effort required. His potential value as a documentary subject, a speaker, a producer, a face of major projects is almost incalculable. The agency saw Meghan as the entry point, the relationship that would eventually give them access to Harry and the much more lucrative opportunities he represented. The problem was that Harry never wanted to play ball. According to sources with knowledge of the situation, the Duke of Sussex was simply not interested in the Hollywood path his wife had chosen. His vision was always different. Focused on Africa, on conservation, on saving elephants rather than conquering Tinsel Town. This was never his dream. He had been dragged into Meghan's ambitions, and he was not about to sign himself over to an agency so they could package and sell him to the highest bidder. His theory, as relayed by those familiar with his thinking, was that this was Meghan's dream, not his. He wanted to continue doing what he considered meaningful work, primarily charitable endeavors and advocacy. The problem with charitable work from an agency's perspective is that it generates very little in the way of commissions. Agencies do not mind when clients serve as ambassadors for causes, but most ambassadors receive fees that the agency can take a percentage of. Harry was not interested in monetizing his charitable involvement in that way. He had his own path, and it did not include becoming a product for William Morris Endeavor to sell. Without Harry's participation, the agency's entire strategy fell apart. Meghan alone simply was not valuable enough to justify the investment of resources, the real money, the exciting opportunities, the projects that would actually generate major commissions. All of that was tied to Harry. When it became clear that the Duke was not going to sign on for the Hollywood ride, William Morris Endeavor had to reconsider whether there was any viable path forward with the Sussex brand. The answer they arrived at would become painfully obvious in the months that followed. But Meghan still had one chance to prove her own value. One opportunity to demonstrate that she could be a star in her own right. That opportunity came in the form of a Netflix lifestyle show that was supposed to change everything. The Netflix show that premiered around Christmas was supposed to be Meghan's redemption arc. This was her proof of concept, her chance to demonstrate that she could carry a project on her own merits without leaning on royal drama or her husband's name. The show was positioned as a lifestyle program that would showcase Meghan's interests, her aesthetic, her approach to entertaining and cooking, and all the things she had been trying to build a brand around. 4. William Morris Endeavor. This was the test that would determine whether their continued association with Meghan made any business sense at all. The show failed. There is no gentle way to put this. It simply did not generate the buzz or viewership that Netflix expected or that Meghan needed. The first season benefited from curiosity from people wanting to see what the Duchess of Sussex would produce given unlimited resources and creative control. But curiosity only carries you so far, and when the reviews came in and the viewing numbers were analyzed, the verdict was clear. The show had not taken off in any meaningful way. Whatever Meghan's vision had been, the audience was not buying it. For William Morris Endeavor, this was the final nail in the coffin. The lifestyle show was supposed to revitalize the entire relationship. If it had succeeded, if it had become a cultural phenomenon, or even just a solid performer for Netflix, there would have been something to build on. New opportunities would have emerged. Advertisers would have come calling. The agency could have used that success into other deals. Instead, they were left with a client whose highest profile project had landed with a thud. And the question being asked behind closed doors shifted from, how do we make this work, to where are we even going with this? I had to read multiple accounts of what happened next before I could believe what I was seeing. Sources describe internal conversations at the agency where the prevailing sentiment was basically bewilderment about what to do with Meghan. The enthusiasm that might have existed when she first signed was completely gone. The potential they thought they saw had failed to materialize. The golden goose they actually wanted. Prince Harry had made it abundantly clear he was not interested in their services. The Christmas show was their last hope for justification. And when it flopped, the writing was on the wall. The agency began quietly distancing itself from Meghan. And if you have been paying attention to celebrity representation, you know that this kind of distancing is often the precursor to a formal separation. When an agency stops actively advocating for a client, stops returning calls with the same urgency, stops putting their weight behind defending that client in the press, the relationship is effectively over, even if no announcement has been made. That quiet distancing is exactly what Meghan experienced in the wake of her Netflix disappointment. And her reaction to this development tells you everything about how she handles adversity. Meghan Markle did not take the quiet distancing from William Morris Endeavor well. Not well at all. Sources describe her as furious about the situation, which tracks with everything we have observed about how she responds when things do not go her way. Rather than accepting responsibility or reassessing her approach, Meghan and her PR team went into overdrive, trying to spin the narrative into something more palatable. The effort to reframe what happened as a mutual parting or a strategic pivot has been extensive. Her publicity machine has been working overtime to suggest that Meghan is simply moving in a new direction, that the separation from WME was her choice, that this represents an exciting new chapter rather than a humiliating professional setback. The problem with this approach is that we live in what one commentator aptly described as the digital age where someone always talks. The real story inevitably leaks, and when it does, all that spin makes everything look worse. This pattern has become distressingly familiar with Meghan. She lies to cover her tracks, puts out a version of events that paints her in the best possible light, and then real sources emerge with contradicting information that exposes the gap between her narrative and reality. Each time this happens, her credibility takes another hit. Each time, the people who might have given her the benefit of the doubt become a little more skeptical. The spinning worked better when she was newer to the public eye, when people did not have years of examples to compare against. Now, the pattern is too obvious to ignore. The fury reportedly extends beyond the agency situation itself. Meghan is described as deeply frustrated that she has no one left to turn to, no powerful advocate willing to put their reputation on the line for her. The usual safety net that celebrities rely on, the agents and publicists and managers who can make problems disappear, has dissolved around her. When you have burned through as many professional relationships as Meghan has, eventually you run out of people willing to take your calls. What makes this particularly difficult to watch is that Meghan has been given more opportunities than almost anyone in her position could reasonably expect. She had Spotify. She had Netflix. She had a major agency. She had the residual goodwill from being embraced by one of the world's most famous families. And one by one, she has managed to squander all of it. The common denominator in all these failures is not bad luck or media persecution or any of the other explanations her team has offered. The common denominator is Meghan herself. And until she reckons with that reality, no amount of spinning is going to change her trajectory. The professional catastrophe unfolding around Meghan is reportedly having serious consequences inside her marriage. Sources describe friction between her and Harry that stems directly from the business failures. And if you understand celebrity dynamics, this is not surprising at all. When one partner's ambitions drag both of them into situations that damage their reputation and finances, resentment has a way of building. The classic active at play here involves one partner blaming the other. The feeling that you could have saved me if you had just done what I needed. Meghan entered this marriage, believing she could use Harry's platform to launch herself into entertainment superstardom. Harry entered believing his wife knew what she was doing, that her Hollywood instincts would guide them to success in their new life. Neither expectation has been met, and the disappointment on both sides is apparently palpable. Harry's dream was never Hollywood. Multiple sources have confirmed this over and over. His vision was something quieter, more focused on the causes he cared about. He thought Meghan would eventually exhaust herself on the entertainment pursuit, and they could settle into a life doing meaningful work. Perhaps based in Africa, far from the cameras and the constant need to produce content. Instead, he finds himself trapped in a cycle of failed projects and negative press associated with endeavors he never wanted to be part of in the first place. The fact that Meghan rejected direction at every turn makes the current situation particularly toxic. She believed she knew best, dismissing advice from professionals with decades of experience, ignoring feedback from the very agencies and companies that were trying to help her succeed. Now that everything has fallen apart, there is no one left to blame except perhaps each other. When you have pushed away every advisor and ignored every suggestion and insisted on doing things your way, the failure belongs entirely to you. That is an uncomfortable truth that Meghan apparently has not yet accepted, and the marriage is absorbing the strain of that denial. People who know the couple describe an atmosphere of tension that was not present in the early days of their relationship. The united front they once presented to the world has developed visible cracks. Whether the marriage can survive the weight of so much professional failure and public humiliation remains an open question. But the trajectory does not look promising. William Morris Endeavor is only the latest name on an increasingly long list of professional relationships that Meghan has managed to destroy. The pattern of abandonment that surrounds her would be striking for any public figure, but it is especially striking given how many resources she started with and how much goodwill she initially enjoyed. Spotify is gone. That deal, which was reportedly worth around $25 million, ended with the company's head of podcasting publicly describing the Sussexes as grifters. Netflix is on life support, with the streaming giant reportedly reconsidering whether their continued association with Meghan and Harry makes any financial sense given the poor performance of their projects. Staff departures have become so common that keeping track requires a spreadsheet. Consider the case of Meredith Maines, a former PR professional who worked with Meghan. According to sources, Maines left after Meghan consistently refused to take professional guidance. Here was someone with real expertise, someone who understood the business and knew exactly what the public wanted to see from Meghan, and that expertise was rejected at every turn. Maines, like so many others before her, eventually concluded that there was no point trying to help someone who would not be helped. The decision to publicly antagonize the Kardashians remains one of the more baffling strategic choices in recent celebrity memory. The Kardashians have exactly the kind of connections and influence that Meghan desperately needs. They have built an entertainment empire through exactly the kind of lifestyle content that Meghan claims to want to create. Alienating them serves no purpose except perhaps to satisfy some. 15:10. 15 minutes, 10 seconds. Momentary impulse, and it potentially closes doors that might have otherwise remained open. Someone like Meredith Maines would have understood this, would have counsel-led against picking that particular fight. But Meghan does not take counsel, and so the fight was picked. Even the launch of As Ever, her lifestyle brand that was supposed to represent a fresh start, has failed to generate the comeback she desperately needed. The products have been met with indifference or ridicule rather than the embrace she expected. The carefully curated image she is trying to project does not resonate with consumers who have watched years of drama and contradiction. You cannot spend years complaining about media intrusion and then expect people to eagerly consume your lifestyle content. The disconnect is too obvious to ignore. The through line connecting all these failed relationships and abandoned projects is Meghan's apparent inability to accept that she might not always know best. Every professional who has tried to guide her has eventually given up. Every company that has invested in her has eventually pulled back. Every opportunity she has been given has eventually turned sour. At some point, the common element in all these failures has to be acknowledged. And that common element is not the media or the royal family or racism or any other external factor. It is Meghan herself. There is a lesson buried in this whole debacle, and it is one that Hollywood has been teaching for generations. No title, no marriage, no amount of PR spin can substitute for actually delivering value. The entertainment industry is brutally meritocratic in ways that outsiders often fail to understand. It does not matter who you married or what you used to be called or how many followers you have on Instagram. What matters is whether you can generate revenue, attract audiences, and make money for the people who invest in you. On every one of those metrics, Meghan has failed. The agency system in Hollywood functions much like the old studio system did during the golden age of cinema. Studios used to mold their stars, teach them how to walk and talk and present themselves, control every aspect of their public image. Without that guidance, many stars were completely lost. They had never learned to navigate the industry on their own. And when the studio system collapsed, careers collapsed with it. Major agencies serve a similar function today, providing the infrastructure and support that allows talented people to succeed. Meghan had access to that system and rejected it, believing she could do better on her own. Her fatal flaw has been believing she always knows best while consistently proving that she does not. Every failed project is evidence of poor judgment. Every burned relationship is evidence of an inability to accept guidance. Every spinning press release is evidence of a refusal to acknowledge reality. The pattern is so clear and so consistent that it becomes impossible to explain away as bad luck or unfair treatment. When you burn every bridge and refuse every helping hand, eventually you stand alone. That is exactly where Meghan Markle finds herself today. She has run out of agencies willing to represent her. She has run out of streaming services excited to work with her. She has run out of staff willing to tolerate her. She has run out of goodwill from a public that once welcomed her with open arms. The woman who seemed to have everything just a few years ago now has nothing left except a marriage under strain and a brand that nobody seems to want. The entertainment industry is not particularly forgiving of second chances, and Meghan has already burned through several of those. What comes next for her is genuinely unclear. Perhaps she will find some new avenue, some new opportunity to pursue. Perhaps she will finally accept the guidance she has spent years rejecting and begin the long process of rebuilding her reputation. Perhaps the marriage will survive the strain and she and Harry will find a way forward together. But based on everything we have seen, based on the pattern that has repeated over and over again, the most likely outcome is more of the same. More failed projects, more burned bridges, more spinning that makes things worse, more fury that accomplishes nothing. There is something almost tragic about watching someone with so much potential squander it so completely. Meghan Markle had opportunities that most people can only dream about. She had a global platform, unlimited resources, access to the most powerful people in entertainment, and a public that was initially eager to support her. All of that is gone now, and she has no one to blame but herself. When the history of this era is written, the story of Meghan Markle will serve as a cautionary tale about what happens when ambition outpaces ability and self-belief becomes delusion. Sound off in the comments. And if this is your first time here, subscribe.